Thank you. When approached to present at such important and valuable events like this one, I always eagerly oblige, because as it was mentioned, I get to speak in front of a diverse crowd and represent the possibility and potential which lies within every regular neighbourhood state schooling experience here in Australia right now. My clip. As an educator and school leader, every day I face cohorts of students and faculties of staff. I front the individual faces that give life to the data, eyeballing their experiences and cradling their opportunity. I possess great responsibility and contribution to the day-to-day educational experiences and outcomes of all students, not only within our individual school setting, but across our entire region and state system. Thuringowa State High School is situated in the city of Townsville, North Queensland, in the suburb of Condon. It is one of 3 state high schools that serve students in years 7 to 12 in the broader electoral division of Thuringowa, which has a population of around 60,000 residents. Thuringowa State High School has a history of providing academic excellence, sporting and cultural achievement, and a vibrant community spirit. Today, the school caters to 780 students. 40% are Indigenous, 8% have a disability verified under the Education Queensland Education Adjustment Program process, a total of 25% that have a disability under the broader nationally consistent collection of data, 9% have a language background other than English, and 63% of students come from homes that sit in the bottom quarter of the socio-economic scale, contributing to the school's total ICSEA value of 859. The lowest ICSEA rating of any standalone high school in the entire North Queensland region. In 2002, the school met the requirements for appointment of a special education program, resulting in the designated self-contained teaching space known as the Special Education Unit. The unit was serviced by the allocation of special education teachers, special education teacher aides, and a head of special education services. Although students with disability were very welcomed into the school environment and participated in broader extracurricular events and activities alongside their peers, up until the closure of 2014, their education was delivered in segregation, with some small pockets of basic integration coexisting. Students accessed partial exposure to the regular curriculum and were streamed into lower ability level junctures. No commensurate year level rigour was delivered. Access to specialist subjects like science and health and physical education in purposeful environments with specialist staff was limited, as too was their exposure to information and digital technologies. Ad hoc life skills and social skills programs replaced other key learning areas. A fenced lunch space was provided solely for their occupation, and students were very heavily case managed. Although this self-contained unit approach was well-intentioned at the time, it was very much a medical model approach that centred on deficit. The perception was that students with disability had limitations, were not ready or able to engage in regular education settings or with regular curriculum, and that they needed a level of special, additional or different that sat outside the ordinary realm of diversity that naturally existed within every general education classroom anyway. It was believed that the separate environment, targeted teaching appointments and selective peer group would better support development toward curricular norms and basic skills, isolate functional impacts and control behaviour responses. However, as many of us know, this special approach is far from special in its execution, outcomes and promises, no matter how well intentioned it is. And we have 40 years of unequivocal research affirming that inclusive schooling is far superior to segregated responses like the special education unit that we had. When briefly looking from the outside in, students in our segregated setting appeared to be engaged, mostly compliant and achieving some modified outcomes. However, not everything is always as it seems. For those who have been marginalised for the majority of their schooling experience and whose opinions and voices have been shouted over by the adult and by the system, it is not surprising to see conformity and general acceptance when it is all that they had ever known and all that they had to compare. When students at Thuringowa were asked about their experiences and given true opportunity to honestly reflect and to be heard, They describe their segregated educational experiences as feeling dumb, feeling weird, bored, missing out, not fair, no real friends, not real work, like a baby, lonely, and less than everyone else. Students reported high incidents of teasing and bullying. They unveiled a deep sense of always feeling that they were different and not worthy of experiences like everyone else. The special education building itself and the staff and students within it were tarnished with a reputation that would see other school community members not wanting to be seen near it or even to speak with its people in an attempt to avoid being associated with the negative culture and opinion of what it represented. Special education teachers were not seen as capable, skilled teachers who were able to teach outside of the unit walls, and that the work that went on within it was just busy and supplementary. In mid-2014, the Head of Special Education Services role was open for application, and I was successfully appointed as the new substantive holder. I was a young, enthusiastic leader with a strong commitment to inclusive education. My path crossed with the principal, who was also relatively new to the school and who was eager for change and possessed a refreshed and current perspective as a result of engaging in the Quality Schools Inclusive Leaders Professional Development Package delivered statewide by Dr. Loretta Giacelli as part of Queensland's response to the More Support for Students with Disability federal initiative. Together we identified the need for change and set about making it happen. Equipped with extensive understanding of the theory and practices that underpin inclusive schooling, in combination with a then 6 years' experience as a special education teacher, and with a supportive principal by my side, I was well equipped and eager to tackle the momentous task that is whole school transformation. Having attempted to impact systemic operations as an acting leader in 2 previous settings, I had learnt a thing or two, and this time I had opted to heavily invest in preparation and planning. Over the course of the second semester of 2014, I bunkered down in what I affectionately referred to as Operation Bring Down the Fence, which funnily enough had both literal and metaphorical connotations to the task at hand. Inclusive schooling is about far more than student placement and organisation structures. These are superficial moves, and failure to think beyond their simplicity will result in negative experiences for both staff and students. Inclusive schooling is about a whole new, progressive way of thinking and doing that requires a commitment to transforming traditional practices and mindsets, skilled and highly responsive pedagogical approaches, and strong leadership that is underpinned by solid professional knowledge and understanding. Therefore, it is important to invest in deliberate and strategic planning and preparation. Whilst operating in this phase, I worked through a series of design strategies that laid the foundations and paved the way for resonating change. Firstly, I stopped to think. I re-engaged with research and theory around what constitutes an inclusive school and what constitutes an effective school. I established an understanding of the theory and principles and practices that sit behind both forms, and how they link in with legislation, policy, and strategic directions. During this process, I realised that effective schools and inclusive schools do not have to be separate entities. Schools are often focused on being effective, which is primarily about improving student achievement data, and as a result find themselves heavily driven by strategies and programs targeted at deficits in that data. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does narrow the focus and often results in responses such as ability grouping or streaming, pull-out programs, and self-contained spaces in an attempt to be more effective, something that we were definitely guilty of at Thuringowa. This still left us coming up short every time, not only for the students in the unit, but for those throughout the entire school. I concluded that the missing link in the effective equation was the consideration and implementation of inclusive principles and practices. When you view effective and inclusive as being mutually exclusive, you unlock a potential for greater clarity and an ability to actively plan for and reach the margins, in turn reaching all. As a result, my focus shifted from being only about the 70-odd students sitting in the unit to being about the sum of our entire school community. Therefore, the second strategic move in the planning phase was forming Strength in Numbers. Strength in Numbers was about establishing a like-minded, collaborative community that was focused on building cohesiveness and developing collective knowledge and understanding around inclusive schooling and its significant contribution to effective schooling. This foundation was used to engage in future cycles of inquiry around the design of our inclusive schooling model. It allowed for collective responsibility, rigorous professional learning, multiple solutions to problems, change beyond the individual, and it added scalability to the transformation tasks at hand. This collaborative community engaged in processes that set about recognising potential and resulted in the creation of an overall vision. We completed a mapping task that allowed us to reflect upon and highlight what was our current service model. On the school map, we annotated our context, where all students were located and what they accessed, where staff were located and who they taught and supported, what programs and opportunities existed and who accessed them, what expectations and outcomes were for students with disability and what they were for students without disability, what was effective for some students and what wasn't effective for others. This dramatically identified significant inequity in what we were doing. So, calling on our shared knowledge and understanding of the principles and practices associated with inclusion, we set about mapping out the change that we wanted to see, resulting in a vision that was used to centre all future work. Following on from this, we identified what it would take to bridge the gap between the now and what we wanted in the future. We categorised key actions and took the time to reflect against research and evidence-based practice to capture as much detail and depth as possible, and to ensure that our shift would give us the best initial opportunity to be effective and inclusive. At this point, it was time for me to pause and reflect on whole school readiness for a shift to an inclusive schooling model. I investigated the current mindset and culture surrounding students with disability and the thoughts and perceptions around inclusion. The barrier was high and it was wide. From previous experience, I knew that I needed to stop and work in the space of culture change until I had 80% of investment. That is, 80% who were willing and who significantly wanted to see the change occur at our school. If I moved beyond without having that 80% investment, I would have significantly risked a response that centred on minimal compliance, lack of long-term commitment, and the less than desirable outcome of integration. You see, the will has to come before the skill. You will experience roadblock after roadblock if significant culture shift does not occur first. How do you successfully impact school culture is one of the most common questions I'm asked. Those asking the question always have such eager and hopeful faces that I'm going to give them a surefire formula that will send them off on a merry journey of nods and smiles and open arms from their staff. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but there is no magic bullet on this one. There are, however, a few key moves along the way that can assist. So one of those is utilising the assistance of your collaborative community. Their strategic recruitment and preliminary work and early buy-in gives you some leverage. Commit to intercepting and interrupting responses of fear, ignorance and opinion. And do this by challenging negative comments and attitudes, reframing language and supporting doubt. Establish a growth mindset to influence professional growth and improve capacity to meet the challenges ahead. As with the collaborative community, develop shared beliefs and understandings about the purpose of education for all students. Work to develop a social model approach. Encourage thought processes around neurodiversity and around all students being capable learners that are worthy of contribution and a high standard of education. Share the research and the evidence, and share the voices of those who have experienced successful inclusive schooling. In doing these things, you will need to differentiate your approach. You will need to invest in opportunities for whole staff engagement, and by whole staff, I mean whole staff, from the cleaners and maintenance staff right through to the leadership and system level representatives. Everyone plays a vital role in the culture of a school. You will need to conduct small group follow-up sessions and opportunities for individual reflection and exposure. Specific work with pre-existing special education staff is vital. It will often be assumed that they are automatically on board with inclusive reform, and their peers will more than likely position them as knowledgeable others, simply because of their proximity and experience working with students with disability. The leadership team is also another vital component. Heads of department, lead teachers and deputy principals are in a position to lead teams and demonstrate confidence and support through an unsettling time of change. Having sat in the space of influencing culture for a number of months to achieve 80% buy-in, with renewed enthusiasm, I returned to the final planning phase. With the aid of an inclusion tool, I pieced together an inclusive schooling policy that laid out the terms of engagement. I worked with the collaborative community to flesh out an action plan that would see us through our first year of implementation. Within it, we detailed the key moves previously identified, giving them life as accountable SPARK goals and operational plans. Through the assistance of the leadership team, we set up the organisational aspects, including staffing, timetabling, class lists, capability development, support processes and general logistics, all with the financial and staffing allocations that were already afforded to the school. Operation Bring Down the Fence was now prepared for launch, and on the final day of the year, my recruited partner in crime, who's also known as the groundsman, whipped out his tools and ceremoniously pulled down that literal and metaphorical pastel green fence. Throughout 2015, we implemented a deliberate and gradual rollout of the model. To begin with, we invested heavily in developing staff capacity in Years 7 and 8 and with pre-existing special education staff. We engaged in an action research project focused on co-teaching and differentiation, which saw the development of a weekly professional learning community to build capability. We engaged in regular cycles of inquiry, tracking data and ironing out problems of practice as they arose. We sought feedback from parents, students, staff and broader departmental representatives and continued to evolve our practice. Over the course of 2016, we scaled our capacity and utilised our lessons learnt to impact classroom practices at all year levels and to develop and implement a full suite of operational policies and procedures. This resulted in the eradication of the temporary integration responses and greater emphasis on not only around access and participation, but on social and curriculum outcomes as well. The SEU was completely disbanded and repurposed for use as something else. In 2017, the model reached its intended representation. All students are welcomed at enrolment and parents and students are supported to engage with and undertake enrolment procedures. Students are timetabled into heterogeneous classes and students with disability are proportionally placed across all classes in the year level. Students are provided access to year level curriculum that is supported by quality, differentiated teaching and learning processes. Students requiring access to alternate year level junctures do so with the support of a unique curriculum alignment process, which sees the variation in complexity of content descriptors and achievement standard being matched to regular year level units of work, resulting in rigorous full participation and engagement with age appropriate contexts within the general education classroom 100% of the time. Explicit instruction, cooperative learning, peer tutoring and station teaching methods are utilised as some of our core pedagogy. Learning environments are organised and managed to be accessible by all, and teachers adopt a variety of strategies to support attention and sensory regulation as a baseline standard of practice for the entire class. Positive behaviour for learning is implemented school-wide. Teachers and students are supported through the appointment of authentic co-teaching partnerships that result in 2 teachers being assigned to one regular-sized class, with both having complete parity over the educational experiences of all the students in the room. Teacher aid appointments from various allocations are pooled and disseminated to support the classroom teacher and the whole class as evidenced through collective functional impact, not based on individual or marginal groups of students. Students are seated sporadically within classes and not clustered together based on ability. Labels are not used to describe students, and students no longer receive ongoing special education case management. Classroom teachers are the experts on student performance in their particular context, and in collaboration with support staff, the student and parents, they identify what supports and strategies work best and modify these through ongoing real-time analysis of student response and performance. Blanket strategies that are based on perception and past performance are no longer supported. The micromanagement of a student's every move is non-existent. Adult proximity has been removed, and special education staff are no longer the gatekeepers of information, communication, or intervention. Investment in maintaining inclusive culture and its shared beliefs and understandings occurs through regular professional development for all staff and through regular highlighting and sharing of best practice by members of staff. We utilise the school improvement hierarchy from the current Queensland Every Student Succeeding state school strategy in combination with a circle of practice as a means of recognising our current successful practice and as a guide on what needs to happen next in our inclusive school improvement journey. This has us aiming for the target of at least 90% of people 90% of the time. Our goal is that when entering a classroom, you cannot tell which students are students with disability or which staff members are employed under the special education banner, that supports are effective but as invisible as possible, and that there are no special students, no special staff, no special curriculum, and no special places. There are no secrets to our success, no magic wands, no over-allocation of staffing, and no additional funds. Our decision to move to an inclusive schooling model was dictated by a moral imperative and an evidence-driven practice. Everything that we have done and have achieved is a result of a deep-seated investment in nurturing the will and obtaining the skill in order to value the worth and contribution of all of our learners without exception. It has been a result of preparation, hard work, thinking about things differently, and continuous reflection. We continue to evolve our practice as our inclusive lens magnifies opportunity. For example, this year we are driving the implementation of restorative practices to further support our positive approach to teaching and managing behaviour, and to building and repairing relationships. We are invested in supporting teachers to increase their awareness and use of the essential skills for classroom management and to provide proactive and least intrusive intervention strategies. And we have committed classroom profiling and instructional coaching processes to support teachers and build their capability. From the first time that we tabled the idea through to the present day, the school has experienced ongoing success. In that 3 years, we have graduated 4 overall position 1s, Queensland's highest senior school certificate ranking that is only obtained by the top 2% of students in the state each year. We have dramatically increased our senior school attainment percentages, with 100% of students exiting with senior certificates for the last 2 years, which is an increase from only 69% in years prior. We have increased percentages of students continuing on to university, from 8% to now 20% and growing. A reduction in all forms of disciplinary absences, increases in our apparent retention rates across the board, increases in overall attendance, and solid increases in our school opinion survey data. 93.9% of our students say that teachers expect them to do their best. 92.2% say that teachers encourage and support them to do their best. 81.4% of students say they would recommend our school to others, and this is a 9% increase from previous years, and is 3.4% higher than our like schools across the state. 81.6% of teaching staff say they feel confident in engaging all students in learning, and 96.6% of staff state that the school looks for ways to improve. This is 2.5% higher than the entire state average. For students with disability specifically, our data indicates increases in attendance, increased social and emotional outcomes, and significantly improved curriculum access and academic results. We have less students accessing a modified curriculum plan and no students accessing partial curriculum. For those who do access modified curriculum, they are doing so at year levels much higher than when they attended their previous schools and continue to progress to higher levels with every passing year. At our recent school awards ceremony at the end of last year, we had a number of students with disability who were previously in our segregated unit model achieve awards based on the exact same criteria as their peers. Elliot, who has autism, was awarded the Whole School Instrumental Performer of the Year. Chloe, William and Courtney, who all have an intellectual disability, were given awards of merit, as too was Blair, who has a speech-language impairment, and Will and Elliot, who both have autism. Blair also received the Subject Award for Year 11 Physics, even after he was streamed into accessing modified partial curriculum in his junior years within the Special Education Unit. Will also received the Year 12 Subject Award for Information, Digital Media and Technology. Kayleen, who was a Year 10 student with an intellectual disability, was awarded the James Cook University Academic Encouragement Award, an award designed to support and encourage her progress to future university study, and this year, as a Year 11 student, she is undertaking a pre-tertiary pathway. Even more resonating are the individual stories and journeys of the students themselves. For example, Navar is a Year 11 student who commenced with us at the start of his Year 8 year. He has an intellectual disability verification, has diabetes and asthma, has had cancer and has a vision impairment that resulted in a recent failed corneal transplant. In primary school, Navar accessed a segregated setting that was heavily staffed with teacher aides, and he caught a taxi to and from school via transport assistance. He had limited exposure to students without disability and accessed curriculum at early primary school levels. His attendance was very poor, and he had a significantly high percentage of behaviour incidents and disciplinary absences. Since enrolling at Thuringowa, he has experienced greater independence, walking to and from school and transitioning between classes on his own. He socialises in regular environments and has successfully developed authentic friendships. He has attended regular classrooms from the very first day and has progressed to attending some lessons that do not have the support of an additional adult at all. Last year he achieved Cs in all key learning areas at levels that included Year 8 for Maths and Year 6 for Science. For all of last year and this year to date, he has not received a single disciplinary absence and his attendance has dramatically improved. When asked if he would prefer to attend a segregated classroom, he said, "Nah, miss, I don't need to go back there. I'm good now." Will was a Year 12 student who commenced with us at the start of Year 8. He has an autism verification. He accessed all core subjects for Years 8 and 9 in our previous special education unit. In Year 9, he accessed partial curriculum below a Year 7 level and had limited and variable success. He engaged in some negative behaviours that also resulted in long suspension. Once accessing an inclusive experience, Will's attendance became exemplary, and he was not involved in a single behaviour incident for the remaining time at school. He accessed a full Queensland Certificate of Education pathway, and those amazing results speak for themselves. He holds a part-time job and has continued on to study at TAFE. Will's mum has provided us this feedback. "I seriously cannot thank Thuringowa High enough for all that you have done and with William. You have made the difference in his life, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. He would not be where he is today without your help, support and understanding." Will himself has said, "I never enjoyed school until I was given the opportunity to be myself alongside everyone else. I used to think that I wasn't capable of what they were capable of. I now know that I matter and that I can do the same things that all kids my age do. Yes, I am different, but I am not so different that I need to be kept separate or hidden. Inclusion at Thuringowa makes me beyond happy. I am equal, I am smart, and I now have options." Jaden is a Year 8 student. He has an intellectual disability, Klinefelter syndrome and ADHD. He accessed the local special school from the start of Year 3 through to the completion of Year 6. He accessed curriculum at a partial Year 1 level in 2016 and in the years prior, accessed levels at foundation and pre-foundation where he was graded for consolidating and participating only. He was given school rewards for behaviours such as listening and acting calmly. At Thuringowa, he has achieved Cs across all learning areas in 2017, including Year 2 for English and Year 4 for Maths. He increased his independence and utilises assistive technology to reduce his reliance on additional adult support. Jayden describes regular inclusive high school as the best. I like it way more. I can do better work. Drew was a Year 12 student. He has autism and an intellectual disability and engages in limited verbal and written communication. From 2013 through to the end of 2014, he accessed our previous segregated unit for all core subjects. For those 2 years, he did not access rigorous curriculum with high expectations. Instead, he engaged in busy work and basic participation parallel to the other students with disability, which was also reflective of his primary school experience. As a result, he received not assessed ratings for all subjects. In 2015, he entered Year 10 and experienced the shift to an inclusive schooling model. He accessed the Australian curriculum for the first time and also engaged with and completed assessment for the first time. He accessed curriculum at foundation level within regular Year 10 classes 100% of the time and achieved a C for English, a D for Maths, a B for Science and an A for Geography. In 2017, Drew graduated from Year 12 and successfully completed his Queensland Certificate of Individual Achievement. He has gone on to work in the earth moving and landscape industry and is independently operating bobcats. When I asked Drew if he liked going to regular classes with all of the other students, he gave a thumbs up and said yes. He then put his hand over his heart and said love before giving me a hug. These feelings of acceptance for inclusive schooling are reciprocated by peers without disability, who when asked why inclusive education is important, responded with, "It makes it more like real life. It's like shopping centres. There aren't separate ones for people with disability. It helps us to learn how to help everyone. It allows for a chance of a variety of different answers and input. It allows everyone to get along and teaches us how to interact with different types of people. It's more fair. Because everyone is important and no one should have to be treated differently. I don't even actually think about or notice who has a disability. We're all just kids." I'm often asked by parents and teachers alike whether I foresee a type or severity of disability that would not fit with the inclusive schooling experience. My response is that I do not see types, severities or disabilities. I see children. The rest is just detail, and we all have details that could be overanalysed or emphasised, and that could be used as excuses to write all of us out of this room now. Sure, some students for a broad range of reasons do present with characteristics of complexity and challenge, but they are not themselves complex or challenging. When you focus on the strengths, the vision and the desired outcome, the rest can be overcome with an investment in collaborative problem solving and teacher capacity building. Two powerful aspects that, as one of our North Queensland Assistant Regional Directors points out, doesn't cost much more than some rigid egos along the way. Successful inclusive schooling is not a destination. It is an ongoing process of thinking and doing that requires great commitment and continuous learning and improvement. Instead of responding with the oxygen tents of the status quo, Thuringowa State High School faces the challenges with enthusiasm and a solutions focus. We are determined to not let the limitations of our system become the limitations of the students, and therefore we are instead giving life to our own new order, a true inclusive order that is focused on equitable education and outcomes for all.